And yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. It is I gavel in the meeting at 5:32 p.m. Welcome. Love to see y'all faces, new faces too. So let's do a quick roll call with your names, pronouns if you're comfortable, position, and uh, for today's check-in question, what is your best ice cream in your opinion? I really want to know. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Kai, he, him series, Speaker of the Senate, and Baskin Robbins. You can't go wrong with mint chip, honestly, with the little panda on it. I'm gonna switch it to Candace because you're giving me a look.
Yes, I am. I'll apologize in advance because the children are screaming downstairs. We just actually started going to a new ice cream place in Highlandtown called Corazon Helado, and they sell Mexican ice cream. And one of the ones that I got was called Gansito, which is like a Mexican cake mixed with ice cream made into a ice cream popsicle, and it's so good, y'all. You should go. It's on Eastern, and it's really good, so you should go in Highlandtown. And I'm gonna pass it to Reese because I like Reese's tie.
Oh, thank you. My name is Reese. I'm a senator. I use he, him pronouns. And I think you can't go wrong with some strawberry ice cream. As long as there's real strawberries. If it's artificially flavored, then it's not worth it. I'm gonna pop it to Julius.
All right, hello. My name is Julius Gale. My pronouns are he, him, his. SJ Sender. And I guess chocolate ice cream. I don't know any particular brands. I don't eat it as much as I want to, but I can never go wrong with chocolate ice cream. But with Nayla Benet.
Hi, I'm Nayla Benet. I'm an SGA senator. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I really love chocolate chip cookie dough. I'm going to pass it to Maria.
Hello, my name is Maria. My pronouns are she or hers, and I'm an SGA senator. I really like the chocolate devotion from Cold Stone. It's my go-to. And I will pass it to Nana.
Hi, my name is Nana. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm an SGA senator, and I love me some chocolate ice cream. Actually, I'm a MEMS covered chocolate ice cream. I'll pass it on to Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns, and I'm the assistant speaker. I think I'm going to go with coffee, and I'll pass it to Michelle.
Hey, Mershad Devin, he series pronouns, SGA president, and I will pass it to Patrick.
Hey, my name is Patrick, SGA senator, he, him pronouns. My favorite ice cream is gonna be Taharka Bros chocolate fudge for sure. And I will pass it to Lucy.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Delgado, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm just joining y'all in with Jasmine for our quick convo. But I forgot who said, I think Reese, you mentioned strawberry. That's usually my favorite with real strawberry pieces. But my partner has gotten me into Cuban coffee Oreo at Be More Licks. Highly recommend. It has Oreo pieces in it, and it has a really great chocolatey delight, but I'm usually a strawberry person. So I'll pass it over to Jasmine.
Hi, everybody. So good to be here tonight. So let me reframe. I was getting really excited about Taharka Brothers because I'm going to talk about it in just a second. My name is Jasmine Lee. I use she and her pronouns. I serve as the Director of Inclusive Excellence in the Division of Student Affairs, and I lead the I3B team, Initiatives for Identity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And I'm here this afternoon taking the lead from Lucy to talk through some things with you all in just a few. My favorite ice cream is Taharka Brothers. for those of you who don't know, is locally owned and made in Baltimore. And they have this flavor called Honey Graham, which is a flavor I've never heard of anyplace else. And it's the greatest ice cream. I have already turned 5 people onto this ice cream flavor and ice cream brand. And so I hope that all of you leave today and get to Harker Brothers like immediately because it's life-changing. And that is my commercial for you all this evening. And I don't know who to pass it to.
Z. I want to hear about your favorite.
I'm Z, a senator, they, them. My favorite is vanilla.
Victoria. Just introducing yourselves. What's your favorite ice cream and position and name and pronouns?
Hello, my name is Victoria. I am SJ secretary, and I will have to go with the basic cookies and cream, I guess.
Cool. Has that been everybody? I kind of lost track.
Hi guys. My name is Mati. I'm an SG senator. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My favorite, my basic favorite is vanilla, but sometimes it's mint chocolate chip or cookie dough. But overall, I'm a vanilla person.
Wonderful. Okay. Has that been everyone now? I lost track. I'm gonna say yes. All right, wonderful. I only asked because that's my #1 craving item at the moment. So, and I'm very indecisive, so I can't really choose at the moment what I want. But y'all gave me some ideas. All right, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Since I have a working computer finally, I can share my screen. Yes. So we'll quickly go over the land acknowledgement here, stating related to our value of inclusive excellence. We would like to acknowledge that UMBC is built on the native tribal lands of the indigenous Piscataway Conoy tribes. We acknowledge the painful history of forced removal from this territory, honor their history as cultivators of this land, and respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we gather. Dr. Jasmine Lee, adapted from you. Okay. Yes, approval of the agenda. What are your thoughts? Is there a motion on the floor?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
There's a second. All right, general consensus. I am taking that as a yes. And with that, the agenda has been passed. Let's move towards the approval of the minutes from last week. Whoops. How did you shift the tabs? There it is. Yes, thank you, Victoria, for creating the minutes here. Looks wonderful. I don't see any issues or any amendments needed, but I hope you all had the chance to look over it. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
There's a second. All right. Again, is there general consensus? I am assuming yes. And with that, the minutes have been passed. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. And I'm gonna pass it over to either Lucy or Dr. Lee. And y'all are gonna give us our DEI workshop. Floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Could you make me or Jasmine a co-host so we could share our screen?
Yes, I can try.
Okay.
Okay, let me know if that worked.
Perfect. Give me just 1 second to pull it up, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Awesome. Are folks able to see the screen? It should be the title slide. Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you to Jessica for inviting us to have this facilitated conversation on inclusive practices. Like Jasmine and I will continue to say, this is just the start of a conversation for us. I know there's some bigger plans for SGA and I3B to be doing some shared work together and some standing committees to go forward. But with that, I'll just do a little bit of a deeper introduction since I know I'm new to campus. So as I said, I'm Lucy Delgado, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm actually the newest coordinator as part of the I3B team, which is super exciting. And what that means for me is my role when we get back to campus is I run the day-to-day operations of the Pride Center. I specifically work with and for LGBTQ students, Asian Pacific Islander, Daisy American students, and something really, really exciting is I get to support dialogue programs on campus. So I will make a quick plug here, and I'll also drop it in the chat when I get a chance, but we are hiring 4 interns for our IDEAL program. So it's a program where you get the chance to have dialogues across difference with various student organizations, different folks who request it. So it's a peer-to-peer education. So what I'm doing right now, you actually could have the opportunity to do this, to facilitate conversations with your peers. So those are the aspects of my role, and I'll pass it over to Jasmine to introduce herself a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what else I can add. That I've been at Michigan State, or where am I at? UMBC, coming from Michigan State. I've been at UMBC for about 3 years now. Have seen some of you all and interacted with some of you all and some of the shared experiences that we've had. And others I'm seeing for the first time, so excited to get to know you better over the course of time. Yeah, so I work directly with the I3B team, spend most of my time working with staff and administrators on campus, less or so working with students, but working with students happens to be one of my favorite parts of my work. So that's that for introduction, so we can keep it moving.
So I know you all did a land acknowledgement statement, so I'll just quickly read this over again to continue to ground us. So UMBC was established upon the land of the Piscataway, Kanoa, and Susquehannock peoples. Over time, citizens of many more indigenous nations have come to reside in this region. We humbly offer our respect to all past, present, and future indigenous people connected to this place. And I'll continue to plug for folks. If you're not in Baltimore County, you can look up what native lands you're on at native-land.ca. And that's been a great resource for me. So I encourage you to continue learning there and go further than that as well. And another link that I will plug at the end.
For this afternoon, we're going to be moving quickly because we know that we only have you for a short period of time. So we're going to talk a little bit about what inclusive excellence is, and then we'll talk a little bit about some inclusive practices, and then we're going to actually spend time hearing from you and giving you the opportunity to reflect on what inclusion already looks like in your work together. And then we will kind of set our walk away time as we focus on the continued work together and kind of what we want to do when we move away from this space. All right, so I'm going to talk first a little bit about what inclusive excellence is. As I'm talking through the next couple of slides, I want you all to be really thoughtful about the fact that at our university, inclusive excellence is a value that we hold deeply. It's something we talk about frequently, and it's also something that we actually don't have a definition for. So every single time we talk about inclusive excellence, we're talking about it from a framework that doesn't actually currently exist at UMBC. And so what I'm really excited about is the possibility of you all within SGA of thinking about what inclusive excellence actually means for you. What does it look like for you? What are the benchmarks and how you measure it, right? And things like that within the SGA organization and how you want to influence the broader campus community. You can go ahead to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to first talk through a couple of definitions. This first one here, inclusion. The term inclusion is used to describe the active, intentional, and ongoing, no, puppy, stop that. Sorry. Active, intentional, and ongoing engagement with diversity and people in the curriculum, in the co-curriculum, and in communities, intellectual, social, cultural, geographic, with which individuals might connect. So what's really key here is the active, intentional, ongoing engagement. right? So inclusion is a result of behaviors that we regularly engage in. It doesn't happen on accident. It's not static. It's fluid, right? All of these things. And just because diversity is present doesn't mean that inclusion is actually happening. All right, you can go ahead to the next slide for me. This next definition, the inclusive excellence, how we're defining it for this presentation is written by AAC&U, Association of American Colleges and Universities. My dog is doing a lot. Association for American Colleges and Universities, of which UMBC is a member. So they describe the framework of inclusive excellence as follows: to achieve excellence of any type, inclusion must be at the center. So just to clarify that first piece there, to achieve excellence of any type. So they're saying academic excellence, right? Classroom pedagogy excellence, so how professors are teaching classes, all of these things, all of it, no matter what it is, when it comes to student experiences and universities, excellence of any type, inclusion must be at the center. And they say that a focus on students' education and social development is included, that using resources to enhance student learning is a focus, that attention to cultural differences that students bring to the educational experience in the university is something that's consistently looked at, is amplified, is celebrated, is measured, right? And that there is a welcoming community that engages all of its diversity to the benefit of students and the university at large. So again, it's not just the amazing, beautiful presence of diversity that we have at UMBC. It's what do we do with that diversity? How do we actually include people actively as a part of their experience? Go ahead to the next slide for me. Thank you. All right, so inclusive practices. Inclusive practices, this is not an exhaustive list. So even as I'm talking through these bullet points, think about things that I haven't named that you think are present for you, things that are named that are not present for you, right? So first, acknowledging, respecting, and celebrating identities, different and individual and collective stories. So recognizing that theories and practices and leaning too heavily into things like colorblindness, right, meritocracy, race-neutral ideologies, gender-neutral ideologies, all of those things are not acknowledging, respecting, and celebrating identities. When we try to render everything as gray and the same, then we miss the unique experiences and stories of folks. Valuing the diverse contributions of communities, seeking diverse contributions if not present. So actively thinking about whose voice is missing, whose experience is missing, right? As a part of this policy, this decision, this thing that we're talking about. Providing opportunities for all voices to participate and be heard. Breaking down individual, group, and systemic barriers to participation and input. So not just thinking about whose voice is missing, but why is it missing? And if there are barriers present, what are we actively doing to mitigate those barriers so that more voices, more experiences can be present? Meeting peers where they are versus expecting them to be, versus expecting them to come to you. Building intentional, meaningful, and mutually beneficial relationships, especially cross-culturally, especially across ideology, identity, right? And then lastly, advocating and acting toward equity as stated by those you are working with and for in the community. Also recognizing, so we didn't have a definition for equity. We talked about inclusion. We didn't have a definition for diversity necessarily either, but equity is really important because equity is not the same as inclusion. It's not the same as diversity. Equity actually means where we are attending to the barriers that are present and we're actively trying to equalize the playing field because we recognize that there's a historical context present that has made things imbalanced. And so equity is trying to level it as much as we can. You can go ahead to the next slide for me. Thank you. So now we're going to transition into what inclusive practices are coming up for you all, what they look like for you all, and things like that.
Perfect. Thank you, Jasmine. So I'm actually going to transition to a different shared screen, if you'll just give me a second. But we're really going to turn the conversation over to you all. So I want to hear from you all these two questions that I'll share on Mentimeter. So what are the most inclusive practices within SGA currently? And then what are the least inclusive practices? So I'll just share my screen again. Give me 1 second. Perfect. So if you all go to www.menti.com and you enter in this code 436383, which I'll put in the chat as well. I just want you to answer as honestly as you feel comfortable. This is totally anonymous. So what do you feel SGA is doing that is super great in terms of inclusion? What do you think is working well? What are highlights? What are places of pride for SGA? So oh, thank you, Kai. And then I'll drop in the code here. And then as you all start to fill that out, the answers will populate and we'll have some time to debrief. But what I encourage you is you'll get the most out of this with what you put in. So since you all know SGA the best and you all are involved on the day-to-day and Jasmine and I aren't, I want you all to share what you believe are the most inclusive practices, and then we can go from there. So we'll have a starting point. So I'll give us a couple of seconds to start putting answers in. You can actually enter our responses as many times as you'd like on Menti. So don't feel like you only have to enter in one reply. Okay, so I'm seeing some answers populate here. Our election having 11 seats on the Senate, okay. Our work with beginning international students. So these are the most inclusive practices. I'll wait for a couple more to populate. Acknowledgement of pronouns and creation of a safe environment to correct others on name pronunciation and pronouns, that's awesome. Pronouns are used and respected with slip-ups corrected promptly. Okay, so two folks are really acknowledging pronouns being a really inclusive practice of SGA currently. So variety of UMBC community initiatives. I'll wait for a couple more and then we'll move on to our second one. From a Senate standpoint, having one-on-one speaker / assistant speaker and SGA advisors. Awesome, so it seems like there's high touch points with each other. Our work with different orgs and departments to represent different students. So I'm hearing, based on what Jasmine shared with us, you all already starting to build some of those relationship pieces, are starting to connect with different orgs and a variety of students. Invitations to general body to attend finance and Senate meetings. Representation on shared governance committees. Great, so this is a really great snapshot of what you all think so far at this moment in time are the most inclusive practices within SGA currently. So now I'll move us along to what you all think are the least inclusive practices. I want you also to think about not only least, but maybe what are some gaps? What are things that don't exist just yet? 1 second. So similarly to what we did last time, you just use menti.com, use the same code 436383, and now on your device, you should see this question. So again, what are the least inclusive practices within SGA currently? And like I said, also think about things that may not exist that could make SGA more inclusive. So not only the least inclusive, but also the gaps as well. And again, feel free to answer as honestly as you feel comfortable, and that this will help us really gauge a snapshot and a starting point of where we can go from here. And I'll give us a couple of moments to let some of the responses populate. Okay, so our first response is meeting time that is not movable, exclude certain people who cannot make time in their schedule. Okay, so meeting times, and it seems like from what I'm hearing, meeting times may also be required, that you must attend every single time, which makes sense. And it's reminding me of a previous workshop that I had where folks had to attend meetings and it wasn't flexible for work obligations too. So that's something that's come up a couple of times in speaking about inclusion. So the lack of a dignified department or officer focusing on issues of diversity and inclusion. Yeah, so that's a gap that's definitely been named. And I know Jasmine can speak a little bit more onto some things that are in the works around that too. So need greater awareness and sharing important pieces of past legislation to our student body. Okay, so it seems like there's some connections being made to organizations and to students, but maybe not sharing out what's happening here with the student body. So I'm noting that. The election process can turn into a popularity contest, which it can exclude other good candidates. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind as well. Maybe lack of daily communication among different departments. Oftentimes, students who are joining by phone or other device are tagged last for check-in questions or get spoken over. Messages in chat are sometimes looked over, different standards of accountability. Yeah, so I definitely think this one is speaking to our reality of being in a virtual world and folks having to adapt in different ways if they can't be on camera or if they need to use their cell phone or if they can only be on the chat. So how are we attentive to all of the various ways folks are showing up in a space, not just if they're unmuting or using video. So I'll point that out. Little to no training or workshop time on DEI. So it sounds like this is a good use of our time now that we're here taking these 30 minutes, if it doesn't happen often. And then lastly, less interaction between SGA and student orgs causing lack of communication and information sharing. Okay, so this is interesting because on the previous one, the communication or the connections with different student orgs was a best inclusive practice. And here I'm hearing that we have less interaction between SGA and student orgs. So we'll dive into all of this now. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other. And I just wanted to get reactions. What are folks thinking about those results? I'll definitely make sure to share them out with you all afterwards. So I'll email it out, the two snapshots. So what are folks' initial reactions? Is there anything that's surprising you all? What's coming up based on what you heard?
One thing I'm noticing is a lack of intentionality. I think people tend to pick and choose their own initiatives based on their interests, but we aren't as deliberate or as proactive about DEI as I would like to be.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Wendy. What would that look like? What would that intentionality look like for you?
I think maybe just bringing it up in more spaces and in more ways than just initiatives, because I do like the idea of having more trainings or workshops.
Okay, great. So definitely keeping it in mind over the long term, not just maybe a one-off initiative or when someone brings it up. So having it be a focus over the long term. Awesome. Thank you for that. I think I may have seen something in the chat or not.
I raised my hand virtually.
Perfect. Go for it.
Yeah, so kind of jumping off of Wendy's point, I think that sometimes like SGA is almost like an ivory tower where we try to get people to come to us, and then that works sometimes for the most pressing of concerns, but outreach has been a focus of SGA in like recent years, but it's still nowhere near where we could be.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Reese. So to the slide we had about how do you change that framework of expecting students to come to you and then really shifting that to how can you go to students? So what does that framework shift look like? What does that shift in outreach look like? And I know that's something departments are talking about. I know that's something I think about in my work. How do I shift between expecting students to come to me then going to students? And that's something we call in student affairs, meeting students where they're at. So you all just starting to have this conversation is definitely important, for sure. What are some other thoughts around the inclusive practices, be it what you all are doing great at, or what are the least inclusive practices?
I would say, I like in terms of noticing the technological aspect of how these meetings are running, there has been some consistency with people who join through phone or who have technological difficulties. Sometimes they are chosen last. Like I saw them, and I was like, that's totally true. And it's different. It's like everyone sees their layout differently. So that could be another aspect of it as well. But I think acknowledging that if someone's joining through phone, they're not as able to see faces and like be fully engaged with someone who's on their computer. So just making sure that they're being prioritized just as much and that their voices are being heard would help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something you all can take as a very easy next step of having that conversation about what technological practices you all want to have in this space. Like if folks are joining in from their phone, how can you really have their input as part of this? As we're talking about, how do you gather everyone's input in the process, be it through chat or be it through unmuting and what that looks like. So maybe that's a conversation you all need to have with each other of how can you include everyone's voices no matter which format they're using to join in. And that's just that internal inclusion piece, not even thinking about what does that external part look like. So thinking about that, what are some resources that you all have? What are places you can tap into? What are your capacity and skills that you already have or want to build in terms of inclusive practices? Where can you get buy-in, or what departments can you look to for support?
I think one of the avenues is our one-on-ones. So we have one-on-ones with both the Senate Speaker and Assistant Speaker, so Wendy and Kai, and also like bi-weekly with B. And I don't think B's here right now, but still we have those one-on-one sessions with them like every week with either one or the other. And I think that's a really important time to actually talk to them about if we're feeling that anything is needing to be more inclusive or if there's like a lack of inclusivity anywhere. And I think those sessions are really helpful. Because they're not like in front of a group of people, and it's rather just you talking to them, and they're the ones that can really help out if there are issues like that. And just voicing concerns in general and being able to work with them and talk with them. I think those are good, I guess, avenues that we already have.
That's great. I'm glad you feel like you can go to your advisors like B in Kansas and have those conversations. I would pose two questions for you all. How often does inclusion come up in those one-on-ones? Not something you need to answer now, but just something to think about for yourself. Like how often is this threaded through your conversations? And then secondly, are those conversations coming back to this group and to the larger SGA? It's great to have those one-on-one conversations, but then are they coming back to the larger group? I'll leave those as rhetorical questions, just things to think about, because like I said, this is the start of a conversation, not the end of one. But Nate, what are some other, go for it, Jasmine.
Yeah, I wanted to also just add on to some of these rhetorical questions that you might want to be thinking about is after you have these conversations in your one-on-one or in this space in large group, the question also then becomes, and what next, right? So I want to amplify again the comment that Wendy made, which is right on target around intentionality. Right. So if inclusion doesn't happen on accident, that means every single thing that we do has to be intentional. Right. So that's every email, every phone call, every conversation is intentional. It is with a purpose. Right. And so that means that even in those conversations, we're not having them to say that we had them. We're having them so that we can outline an action that will take place next as a result of the conversation that we had. Does that make sense? So not just what does it look like or how often does it come up? What happens next is the other rhetorical question that you want to be thinking about.
That's perfect, Jasmine. So that leads us into what is the continued work? What are the next steps and commitments? So I'll reshare my slides with you all, which I'll definitely send out afterwards as well. So what does the continued work look like? Let me pull up that slide.
While you're pulling that up, Lucy, the one other thing that I am curious about, and again, you all don't need to answer this question in real time, but the comment that came up around not enough time for DEI workshops and trainings, What I would encourage you all to think about too, and you can circle back with us after as we think about how we can support you all in this ongoing process, are what are the specific topics that you feel like are necessary for you all to talk about, right? So we can say, a lot of times people say like, oh, we just need a DEI training. I don't actually know what that means, right? Like, is that a bias training? Is it a microaggressions training? Is it inclusive language training? Is it, right? And so what I'm encouraging people to get into the regular practice of is getting away from this umbrella term of a DEI training and actually think really specifically about what do we need, right? The things that you all named around pronouns, that's so specific. And it's so clear. And it's obvious to me that you all talked about it, then you all made some commitments, and then you all held each other accountable for those commitments, right? Because that's why it came up as a practice that's going well. And so similarly, what are the other areas, topics, content, cultural competencies, specifically things that you think would be useful and important for your time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's dig into what some of those specifics are over the long term. So as we've been saying, start of a conversation, not the end of one. This is the long haul work. This is the continued work. This isn't just like Jasmine and Lucy came in and we had this lovely conversation and nothing else happened or came of it, and we didn't do the work after this, because the real work happens after Jasmine and I leave. So how are you going to continue to engage with each other around inclusive excellence and practices? How are you going to honor the progress made? So some best practices have been named. You all are doing great around pronouns. You all are doing great on honoring each other and how you identify. But how can you commit to naming the gaps and continuing to see where you can grow and then working towards them? So as we said before, inclusion is active, intentional, and ongoing engagement. So over the long haul, it requires work. It requires continuing to do this intentionally, as Wendy mentioned. And then how do you do things intentionally? I believe in creating plans to make sure the work continues, whether that's what you're hoping to do for the next 6 months, the next 1 year, the next 5 years, leave a legacy for folks in the future. Here's what we were thinking that we wanted to implement in terms of inclusive practices, because this work doesn't end with you all, it continues beyond you all as well. And then continuing to seek out further knowledge, skills, resources, and input. There are really awesome folks here at UMBC that can continue to give workshops to you all, or that you can continue to have conversations with, or even your own peers as well, because as I'll get to with the ideal model, we believe that you all can tap into each other as well as sources of knowledge, skills, resources, and input. So where can you all start tapping into? You reached out to Jasmine and I, and we're one space, but what are the next steps? Who are the next folks you want to reach out to? What are some of those next things to continue building your skills and building out these gaps that you want to seek to plug? So with that, I know we're at time. This was a very quick presentation for us. And as Jasmine said, when folks ask us to do presentation, we could talk about so many various topics. So this was incredibly broad, and we're more than happy to dig into any of these pieces, whether individually or coming back again for a longer time together. So I do quickly want to share some things I3B has. So as we're saying, continuing to engage, continuing to learn from various different organizations or departments on campus. So tomorrow, we actually have our annual, or twice a year, Paw Talk. It's on religious inquiries. It's a really cute name. And we'll be talking about the intersection of LGBTQ identity and religion. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to do some of that self-work and maybe learn a bit more about these intersections of community and bring that work back to SGA. So it's all about bringing this work back too. And then LGBTQ community gathering and networking. I'll be co-hosting that with Amelia and the Women's Center. It's more of a fun opportunity to just get to know different folks. There will be prizes, we'll have trivia, we'll have a really awesome alum keynote speaker. So if you're interested, you can make sure to come to that on Wednesday. And then as we're wrapping up the year, we can't leave the year without celebrating our awesome graduates. So on May 3rd, we have our Cbla Black and Latinx graduate reception, which Carlos has been working super hard on bringing back. There hasn't been this reception over the past couple of years. So we will be giving out graduate packages as well. So if you know folks graduating, we are actually mailing them packages, and there's still time to sign up for them. So you can check it out on I3B's Instagram. And then on May 11th, I'll be helping to support with a lot of awesome other folks the Lavender Celebration from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And all of these things can be found on my UMBC. And to wrap us up, we do have an evaluation. So if you can just let Jasmine and I know some things we could do better in our facilitation or some things you wanted to see, please fill this out. I will be in the background dropping a million links that I definitely said that I was going to share with you all. So I'll be on here a couple more minutes sharing those links. And I just want to thank you all again for really having this conversation, because it seems like you all have these one-off moments, but I want you all to continue to do this work. So I'm just cheering you on. I know Jasmine is cheering you on as you continue to make SGA a more inclusive place. And I'll pass it over to Jasmine for any final words.
I don't have any final words. Thank you so much for having me, us together. I'm going to try to hang out in the background for the presentation that's coming later. So you'll just see my face on the screen until then, because I'll just turn off my camera so I can figure out what my dog is doing. That was Remington, by the way. And that's all. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. I thought this was more than helpful. And I'm more of like a reflection person, so I take a lot of time to like process things. So this is something that will be in the back of my head all day, while I try to figure out how to move forward. But this was super helpful, and thank you both so much. Yes. C. Okay. Yes. Nail Benet. Um. Yes. I do believe they are not here yet for their confirmation. So do you mind presenting now, if that's okay?
Sure, yeah, I can present.
Wonderful, thank you.
If they come in the middle, then do you want me to just keep going or?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. And everyone can see it, right? Okay, let me present it. Okay, so as Senate may know, but I'm not sure if Dr. Lee or Lucy knows, I've been doing this initiative working with some Asian students and kind of doing a focus group to just get a general idea of how they feel during this time and how they feel about the support and the quality of that support provided by UMBC. I started to do this initiative because a lot of the times marginalized groups and students who are part of those marginalized groups feel as though the support they can't critique or they don't feel safe enough to give their honest feedback that can help kind of improve that in the long run. So this is some data that I gathered. It is completely anonymous, and I kind of wanted to say that way just so we can kind of get like a pulse check of how students are feeling. I know it is a small group, but it does span across multiple ethnicities and different organizations on campus. So I do think it's still valuable in that sense. So like I said, the purpose of this initiative was to uplift and amplify the voices of Asian students in both academic and social and professional settings. It's to provide a safe outlet for feedback and honest critique, and also to allow for better execution of events, safe spaces, and statements that are going to be coming out in the long run. We can always be doing better, and because our university is so diverse, it's best to just always be working and improving on our systems in place. So this is kind of a timeline of how this initiative has taken place. April 10th is when students from Japanese Student Organization, Korean Student Organization, AKD Phi, Chinese Student Organization, and Filipino American Student Organization participated and provided some questions that they wanted on the survey. Actually, all the questions that will be presented today were chosen by those students anonymously. And so it kind of brought in that agency standpoint that they can steer the conversation to what they need and what they want the support from. So then students added those questions to a shared Google document. I myself and Catherine Nee, who helped me with this initiative, kind of screened them for bias and something that was like inappropriate language, things like that, just to make sure it was safe for everyone. And then April 29th through the 23rd is when the final survey was sent out for responses. So what I wanted to do was look back at previous events held by I3B and also like the timeline of those events as well. I got all of it from the I3B My UMBC events page, and I went back to 2020, mainly because that's when I was here earliest, so that's when I would have been there for them. And you will see later a lot of the participants were there for those as well. So as we see here in 2020, there was 2 events for Asian American students and Asian students as well. There's one in April and one May 7th, so pretty spread out. And then in 2021, we have 3 events. And the majority of those events took place all in the month of March. So I'm going to come back to this later for one of the survey questions so we can kind of see how students felt about that. So now we're going to go into the data that I collected. Here are some of the demographics of who responded. It was majority sophomores and seniors, very little freshmen and juniors. So in terms of feeling that Asian students are burdened with emotional labor, it was majority agree, which means that people usually feel that they're being asked to do the work and they're being pressured with representing their community in an almost, I would say, unbalanced dynamic between the university and the students. In terms of feeling supported by the resources, students are unsure about that. It's an 81% neither agree nor disagree, which kind of shows that they don't feel like, yes, like I feel completely supported, but since they're unsure about that support, that's something that we can work on further to make it like a definite yes. In terms of the support from the university coming off performative, majority agree with that. In terms of the university doing a lot more to spread awareness, that is 100% agree from all 11 participants. In terms of feeling that their experiences are seen and acknowledged, once again, we have kind of a split, but majority are unsure. And that uncertainty can be kind of a negative in certain instances like that. You want it to be a positive, yes, I feel that my experiences are seen and acknowledged. In terms of feeling that their Asian American identity is well presented by faculty, that is a majority disagree. I'm not really sure how much weight I3B can pull with that, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, if students aren't feeling their identity represented in their department and like in their classrooms, that can have a major effect on the support given by the university. In terms of UMBC providing a safe space, majority are unsure or disagree with that statement. That's something that can be improved on as well, that these safe spaces are something that are able to be critiqued, are able to be molded, are able to be improved on without fear of, you know, being in trouble or having your name be like moved around. That's kind of the reason why this was anonymous, so students felt completely safe and able to be honest in their responses. In terms of feeling that events hosted by UMBC for Asian students are being poorly executed, there was a majority agree. This can be a majority of things. Like I said, we can go back to the other slide later to kind of talk about how having those majority events in 1 month can kind of come off as being rushed, being poorly thought out. That can be kind of the, I'm forgetting the word, but the vision that's like coming out, it can be seen that way. In terms of feeling that Asian cultural student organizations are supported by peers, student, and faculty, majority agree. So I feel like that is a positive, that students are feeling supported by their peers and other student organizations in this aspect. And we also allowed them to have some written responses if they put agree to any of the questions on the survey. And we had multiple, but I'm only going to pinpoint the ones that I feel are most representative of some of the other data that we presented. So this top one here, it is very blunt, but it is honest. I feel that the actions they take are bland and do so little. That could be a majority of things. I think that in terms of everything that's happened outside of school and, you know, in terms of the students feeling that it is performative, maybe they feel like there's little action items being put into place to ensure, you know, their safety and their well-being. This one in particular, and this goes back to the majority of the events held in the past 2 years taking place in 1 month, is the support from UMBC organizations feel performative? Why are they just reaching out to us this year? That can be a majority of things. I personally think that sometimes it's hard to know like how long something should last or when's the right time to reach out. And since this year has been like a big focus on Asian hate crimes compared to other years, that could have been a reason for you all to, you know, give more events and more things like that. But the perception of that could be negative as well. Here was one that I feel was kind of mixed. One I want to focus on is how do we hold these organizations accountable, and how do we go for support when we are scared that speaking out will cause harm to our own organization. So how do you create that safe space for students to critique some of these events and, you know, have that be more of a molding instrument rather than something that they are punished for? I don't think that that's the message that I3B is like promoting, that you can't critique, but if that space is not being promoted and, you know, pushed out that you can tell us that we can do better, then some students will feel like this, that they can't be honest. These is just a summary of everything. Majority feel that the support is superficial and can be improved upon, as well as having the opinion that representation can be increased in faculty in the curriculum. For neither disagree or agree, some students are indifferent towards the level of support and its quality. So now we have a discussion piece. So I would like to hear from you all, like, how do you feel about some of this data that was presented and what do you think can be done?
Who's you all? I3B or everyone else?
It can be everyone. It's just open.
Just Mr. Grau in the background. Okay. So only because I can't stay the entire time, and so I don't want to take up all of your time. First of all, thank you so much. This is really interesting, this data. So I really appreciate it, and I'm interested. I'm looking forward to spending more time with it. There were a couple of things that I wanted to clarify. One is a question and one is a comment. The first thing that I wanted to clarify is, as we are sharing this data, can we also just make sure that people know that I3B actually didn't exist in 2020? We just came online July 1st. So it hasn't even been a full year yet. So Mosaic Interfaith and Pride Center, Campus Life Diversity and Inclusion did exist. And so I want to just make sure that those two are very different, because the work that we're doing now in I3B is not the same work that we were doing before. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear. And so that hopefully moving forward, people will see a difference in the trends around programs and events, right? And so I'm just hoping that we can make that distinction. The question that I had for you was around, at one point you were saying I3B, and then the other point you were saying the university. And so I just wanted to get some clarity around which. So when students are saying the university, et cetera, in some of the ways that you were asking the questions, were you interpreting that to mean only I3B, or does that mean the university, as in Office of Equity and Inclusion, faculty, members, campus life, right? Like all of these other spaces that also still do programs or host listening sessions, et cetera, not just I3B. And so I wanted to just clarify that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I did have some questions about that too when students were, you know, creating these and typing them, because there are a lot of nuance to some of these questions. From what I heard from some of the participants that I talked to, when they think of I3B and the university, it's not that it's hand in hand, but, you know, since I3B is within the university, when they say university or I3B, I think for the people who created the questions on the survey, they're almost interchangeable at that point, because it's going through UMBC overall. I didn't have a lot of part in creating these questions, so I can't provide some more information on that nuance, but from what I gathered, they are thinking of them as one and one.
Got it. Thank you for that clarity.
If I could quickly chime in, and then I do need to head out as well. I just want to say thank you for all of this labor, to be quite honest, because I think this will help to inform my work specifically in I3B as a whole as well, considering some of my roles. So this is definitely a lot of labor to create all of this, to gather this information, and then to share it out and present it out. So I do want to just acknowledge that first. And then the other thing I'll say is I would say I'm welcome to critique. I'm welcome to seeing how we can do better. Just as we told you all, what are some ways you can strengthen your inclusive practices? I think it needs to be mutual, where you all tell us where we can be doing better too, because we're here to serve you. So I heard some hesitation in critiquing I3B, but I would say, and I would hope Jasmine would chime in too, we welcome it. We really do, because that's how we can be better too, because you need folks to share where your learning edges or your gaps are. So we welcome that. And then you can think about this and for whatever conversation happens next, but please do keep me and Jasmine and I3B informed on what next steps could be from us too. As Jasmine said, we're a very new unit, so we're definitely wanting to have students involved in the process on what you all want from us. And I know I'm very, very new to UMBC, so I definitely am open to whatever feedback or whatever suggestions or where we can collaborate for next steps too. So I just wanted to name all of that. And then I do need to head out. So thank you all for the work you're doing.
And thank you. And that's kind of the reason why I wanted to do this, because from my past experiences with Jasmine, I know that I3B, wants the best for the students and is open to this critique and, constantly getting better and growing as a sector. So I wanted to kind of let, the Asian students know that if you do feel this way, there is a way to get this information out, and there is a way to be honest in how you feel that is safe, is constructive. And so that's what kind of drove me to do this, because I do know how I3B works, and, I know that it's for the betterment of the university. So I really do want to thank you all for being really receptive of this and for really being like honest in your work and, taking this to heart, even though it's a small sample size, but thank you.
Yeah, and I still have a few minutes, so I would love to hang out and hear the rest of the discussion if other folks have thoughts and input or questions or anything.
I actually had something, Nailabene, if that's okay. One point that you made really, really resonate. Kai, is it okay if I go? I wasn't sure if I had to be. Okay. All right. One point that you made really, really resonated with me, and that was the how communication or events that UMBC holds in response to social justice crises, I don't know if that's the right word, around the nation could come off as performative. One of the biggest examples that I could think of was the queer Muslim I wouldn't say controversy, but it was something that happened over winter break, and I wasn't personally quite fond of how the university handled it. To be completely frank, it really looked like a PR stunt to kind of save face and show that the university's helping. But I'm not really sure. I'm really not sure what the best way is to go about that. Whenever something happens, mass communication email goes out to all undergraduate students that kind of, states the university's stance and the issue, and kind of like states that the university is standing in solidarity with the affected demographic. But I think it is true that it could come off as performative and just a PR stunt. Not entirely sure what the solution is. What I'm thinking is that, something that Dr. Lee and Lucy mentioned at the beginning of the year, or beginning of this meeting, was to kind of go into the students' spaces, maybe, rather than expecting them to come to us. I think that would kind of help with the performative narrative that exists around a lot of these supportive material that's coming out of the university.
Actually, Michelle, I want to add on to that because I remember that whole issue, and I remember how I also felt like the university didn't take it as seriously, but I feel like that was also a very complicated issue because it went on, it infringed on a lot of different people's rights. And actually, this brings me, did you guys say that the ISB was holding a queer religious workshop soon? Someone
Not a workshop, but a PAW Talk, which is like a storytelling speaker series that happens once a semester.
Yeah, I actually think that was kind of perfect timing in that sense, because I do, if you guys do want to talk about what happened over winter or before winter break last semester, just because I felt like there was a lot of hurt that spread during that time period, and the university really didn't
take as many actions towards it as they should have. But yeah, sorry, that was just something I connected between the two.
Yeah, and that's what's not in the survey. I did have some like phone calls with multiple, student org leaders who sent this out to their general body to like fill out the survey. And a lot of what they said is, they want the email is good in its acknowledgement, but they do feel as though they would like to see action items. I don't know exactly what those action items would look like. I don't want to give too much input as to what they should look like because I'm not Asian, so it doesn't really, but I do think that the emails being sent out, because they're being sent out so often, it kind of loses their their weight and it becomes performative. And so I think what a lot of students of marginalized groups would like to see is like concrete action, we're not condoning this and this is what we're going to do to set that precedent and give that example that this is not okay on our campus.
Yeah, and I don't mean to capitalize our time here, but I do want to make another distinction. I'm cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of legal issues when it comes to, these communications and the way that the university goes about supporting students when something happens. But I think it's really synonymous to our work in Senate, right? Like we can pass resolutions and legislation in support of a specific group, but as long as it's not coupled with action, it really doesn't matter if we passed it. It'll just become a piece of communication and a piece of paper, right? So I think that point that you made, Nilabene, it being coupled with action is really, really important. And that action could manifest itself in many ways, right? Holding a workshop that kind of, or an open discussion space that kind of like invites students might not be the most effective way to go about supporting students, to be frank, because a lot of students around UMBC, it's not even in the culture to show up in these spaces, especially in the virtual setting. So again, not sure what the solution is, but I do think that there needs to be more done on a university level when it comes to issues like this.
Yeah, can I offer a recommendation that I'm happy to take to use my voice to take into spaces, but I think Mershad, you could also do this as well. Every single time something comes up, there's a group of people who convene around whether or not a statement should go out. Depending on what the topic is of the circumstance in the moment, there's a different group of people who convene. There's usually one or two people who are the same people every single time. Usually there's different people. So there's some statements that have gone out that I haven't actually had anything to do with, no one on my team. And then there are some statements that I've like handwritten myself, right? And then Freeman and his folks, will do whatever they do with it, because there is brand management, there is legal stuff that comes into play. The reason I'm naming is because in retrospect, I don't recall there ever being a student as a part of those conversations. And so what it sounds like to me, what you're saying is that there needs to be a student who's involved in these quick, because the decisions are usually made within hours. They're not made over a span of days. They're not made, right? They're made really in a really short time period. So it sounds like to me, we need to use our power to figure out how to get students involved in that process. Even if it's Remington said that, even if it's just in the beginning to give input, because I think regularly we are grappling with whether or not to send a statement. And I mean, to be completely frank, there are some people who are a part of some of these conversations who are saying, I don't want another email. It feels disingenuous, et cetera. Some of the same things that you all just named. And then there's some people who are a part of those conversations who are saying, I absolutely need a statement. I need UMBC to tell me and remind me what their values are and remind me why I'm a retriever, right? And so there's different people on completely different polar sides of it. But it sounds like that student voice is missing as a part of that process. And so I'm happy to take that into the conversations that I have, but I think Mershad, with some of the conversations you have, that it would be important for you to also think about how SGA gets involved in those decisions, or in the language, or in the crafting of statements, et cetera, or response in general moving forward. And maybe the standing department that you all are imagining around DEI, maybe someone in that area is the person who can help contribute to the statements or contribute to the responses that the institution has as different things arise. Because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I think the more voices that are around the table, the closer to right we can get.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I actually like that's a process that I wasn't aware of, the like sectioning of who releases the statement and how fast it gets released. So that's very like helpful to know. Are there any other like comments or questions about what was presented?
Yeah, I had a quick comment, but first of all, thank you, Nilabene, for sending out this survey and presenting it so effectively. I think it's really hard to balance like student involvement with like, are we tokenizing AIPI students, or are we asking them to do more emotional labor than they necessarily should? But at the same time, I would like to see more student-led events, because I think that would be a lot more maybe relatable, because I think it can be difficult to have these conversations with admin and faculty, just because there is that level of like, oh, like you're like higher up in power. And I think it might be helpful, like just as a suggestion, to have more spaces where people can have unstructured dialogue and bring up concerns as they happen. So not necessarily just in response to like a particular event or incident, but just like something more ongoing and open. But that's just like one thought I had.
Yeah, and that was the general, not like the main cause for doing this, but there was an event, the I3B Safe Space, and that was actually like part of helping planning that and things. And I think we had like one planning meeting that I was aware of, and then it happened that following Friday. And I think that because the event happened so fast and because it was, led by non-students, it created that like dynamic of I'm just talking to a faculty member and like I have to do the work to represent the student body. And one of my close peers was like one of the 3 Asian students who were there to, kind of like monitor and like do that event. And so it did feel like they were, taking on that whole responsibility to speak for all of Asian students. That coupled with it not being student led kind of creates that feeling of that they're doing all this work. Yes. Oh, sorry. But yeah, Wendy, you know who it was. And I think there was an event from VSA and BSU that happened on Discord. It was student led and the organizations put it together. And it was essentially the same thing, like talking about how the Black community can work together with the Asian community during this time and how we both experience racism and hate crimes in America. And that was a very, very well done event. And I think the main point was because it had a student leader. So it created that sense of comfortability, vulnerability, something that they don't have to be held accountable for. Not saying that I3B would do that, but you do get that sense of accountability when you're talking to an administrator or talking to someone, who's older than you. So I think that if you are able to include student voices and kind of include them in like the whole process, and something that's like, I guess, continuous, it can kind of eliminate those feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So we just this year started an advisory board. This year, as in like 2 months ago, we've had 2 meetings, and so that's part of the hope is to have more student voices more frequently. What's happening in my mind is balancing exactly what Wendy said around having student-led events, which I completely agree with, and also though what came out in your data, Nilabene, about wanting more university led events, right? Or not feeling like the university is really doing their part. And so how to balance those two disparate approaches, I think, is the ongoing challenge that I'll be thinking about how to navigate that.
Yes, and I know you have to go, so I'm not going to keep you any longer, but thank you so much for like giving us these ideas and having this conversation about the data. And you have the PowerPoint in your email, I think.
Yeah, it came to me. Mm-hmm.
And that PowerPoint as well in the last slide has the full spreadsheet with all of it that even wasn't included. So you can look through that more and see, like, you can keep it for yourself, basically.
Do I have your permission to share it with colleagues as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can share everything. It's totally up to your control now.
I'm going to share, and I promise to give you all the credit. I really appreciate the work that you did. I mean, 11 is not a huge number, but it's a number that matters. And so I really appreciate that you went through all the trouble to get this data and made sure to share it with us when we came today, so that you knew that we would be a captive audience. And so I'm excited to see what comes of this.
Thank you. And Kai, I'll hand it back over to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, I want to echo everyone's thoughts and feelings. This was amazing. All the work that you put in, eliminate, more than snaps if I can give claps even, but yes.
And Wendy and Julius and Reese, because they helped me format the survey as well. So
Yes. Yes, we can speak more about what to how to go about this extending this conversation further through initiative updates, but I do want to respect Halima's time because it is their confirmation. So yes, I would like to introduce Halima. Hi, thank you for being so patient for your confirmation. I do appreciate all of that.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Y'all were having a very important conversation. It's imperative.
Yeah. So yes, welcome to Senate, I should say first. Yeah. This is for the HMEC. I hope that's the way you say it. Is it?
MHEC, I believe.
MHEC. I might be dyslexic. Okay. Yes. MHEC. Yes. Yeah, so if you could just overall introduce yourself and why you're best fit for this position, we can go into a round of questioning afterwards. I'll turn the table over to you.
Well, first and foremost, thank you all for having me. It is a great honor and my pleasure to be amongst you all tonight. So I believe I am a great candidate. Well, first of all, I'm Halima Adekoya. I'm so sorry. Didn't introduce myself. I am a sophomore political science student pursuing an elementary education certificate. I'm also a Sherman Scholar here at UMBC. A lot about me. Okay, so my pronouns are she, her, hers, and yes, you do have my resume and letter. Awesome. Okay. A little about me. So I've always been passionate about student advocacy and uplifting youths in my community ever since I was young. My first job was volunteering at a dance camp. Then I became passionate about female empowerment and co-created a women empowerment organization for Baltimore young women because we felt as if they often were predisposed before they even had the opportunity to show up as their full self. So we created Dare to Be, and after that, we had several events where we allowed the young girls to show off their talents to the Baltimore community at large. Then my senior year, I served as a student board member for Baltimore County Board of Education. I had the opportunity of serving and advocating for over 113,000 students. I was on the policy review committee, also on the curriculum committee. Yes, I was a swab. I served on the policy review committee and the curriculum committee where I advocated for the policies that affected the students' day-to-day life and also the curriculum activities, devices, and tools that basically just made anything that they were learning more inclusive and representative of them. Then I came to UMBC, and prior to my attending UMBC, I taught. So I aspire to become an educator, hopefully superintendent, secretary of education, So I've taught in freedom schools. I worked with different types of students. I taught at Arundel Elementary School in the city. I ran as Miss ASA of UMBC, and with that, I created a mentorship organization under ASA called Amarawa, and I've been able to onboard freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and transfer students, all while COVID was happening. And in this virtual space, we've been able to build meaningful relationships and have those authentic experiences that allow people to still be connected to UMBC despite not even ever stepping foot on campus. So with that, why I believe I am a phenomenal candidate for MHEC, I have been doing the work and I'm very passionate about the work. And my goal is always to continue the work of being a voice for the voiceless and being a representative of those who often tend to be isolated, excluded, and disposed by the systems that surround them and systems that are supposed to be in place to promote their well-being, their holistic well-being at that. And every opportunity I get to further be that voice for the voiceless, further advocate for the greater well-being of students, adults, everyone, humanity at large, I leap at it. And when I saw that I was nominated, I was like, wow, just another opportunity, another stepping stone into that realm of being a representative for those who need it, who need a voice, who need somebody to push them to advocate, just like you all are doing, the awesome work that you all are doing for the UMBC community. I believe in my prior experiences, I come knowledge and willing to learn. So that's something that I really pride myself on, always being willing to learn and to grow and to continue to expand that student voice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Your that was phenomenal, and your resume and letter especially are just fabulous. Chef kiss.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Halima?
Not a question, but a comment. Because I was Halima's mentor on the Schreiber floor last year, and I just think that she's an amazing person, very smart, very capable, and definitely this suits her passions and her knowledge very well.
Thank you, Reese.
I want to echo that from being in Strive 2020 together. I think that she's a great candidate, but I actually have a question. So I know in your resume it's full of examples of how you've advocated for students, but could you walk us through a more specific situation, like how you approached it? And then I have another question after that, but I will let you answer this first.
Of course. So I guess I'll use my SMOB experience, because representing 1,300,000 students was not a walk in a park. It was certainly not something that there's no experience that prepares you for being a student board member, I tell you. And then especially when you're required to listen or at least seek out ways to hear the voices of the students. So one thing I like to pride myself on is the fact that always coming up with creative ways to reach students that seem unreachable, right? So during my position, I had to find ways to gain insight as to how to make school lunches better, or how to ensure that BCPS was prioritizing the voice of minority populations, what is lacking. So what I was able to do was, for one, create a survey that was they never asked the students what do they need, and that tends to be the problem. And at the table, the students are missing. So I was able to create a survey, able to expand it out to all the schools in BCPS. And of course, the work doesn't start there, because sometimes the forms or surveys, they get lost in the email. So with my persistency, I was able to visit the schools. I was able to ensure that students' voices were heard, and ultimately a form that would receive 100 students' input received way more than we anticipated, and from students at different levels, whether you're talking elementary, middle, or high school. I think that's a specific example. And not just that, if I think back to my work with Dare to Be, it was not easy creating an organization whereby people will like shoo you off, like, oh, you're just another organization. But we were able to host 2 annual events where we brought the community out, people from all over Baltimore County, also Baltimore City and Prince George's County, were able to come and witness the brilliance of our young students. So I think those are 2 specific examples whereby I've been able to work against the odds, with the passion of putting the students and kids first, and those who needed the space were provided the space. I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. And actually, before we continue, I see that Candace put in the chat, are there any questions about the MHEC position? So Mershad actually sent out this email to the SGA listserv, and I was wondering, Kai, do you mind if I read out the description, and I'll also put it in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. Just so we're all on the same page. So the Maryland Higher Education Commission, created in the 1988 reorganization of higher education, is the state's coordinating and planning agency for higher education. As such, its purview is statewide, including the state's 13 public four-year colleges and universities, 30 independent institutions, 16 community colleges, and over 130 private career schools. Its major functions include statewide planning, establishing operating and capital budget guidelines, approving institutions and academic programs, conducting research and policy analyses of post-secondary education, administering state aid to independent institutions and community colleges, colleges, administering state financial aid programs and educational grants, performing various regulatory functions, and ensuring the accountability of all institutions to its ultimate constituency, the citizens of Maryland. So yeah, that's kind of long, but then Rashad's email goes to explain that there's 12 members who are appointed by the governor. And for the student commissioner position specifically, you'll have a voice and a vote in all matters that come before the commission, and you're expected to attend all meetings, including those of the work group to which you're assigned, and representing the commission at other times and places when appropriate. And you'll be serving from July 1st through June 30th without compensation except for reimbursement of expenses for state travel regulations. Okay, and then my second question was, did you run into any challenges while you were in any of your positions, and what did you learn from those experiences?
Ooh, challenges. I can talk all day about that. They're molding for sure. I'll give two examples. So with hosting the events for Dare to Be, one of the challenges was financing. And aside from financing was also getting people to show up. People tend to overlook, once again, like I stated earlier. So I think with the finances, I was able to be creative. We were having bake sales, we were having fundraisers, we were having raffles, because you not only want to, of course, get money to fund it, you want people to see the purpose and the meaning behind what you're doing. So with that, I was able to step out of my comfort zone of, rather than, because I'm the type of person, I'm like, okay, if I want to do it, I'm just going to put my money towards it. But I realized that there's a community facet to learning how to ask your community to help collectively build your missions and your passions. So that was something, and I had learned that you have to always remember your why. And when you are amidst any challenge, and this will go to my second challenge. My second challenge was when I was on the board, I was removed from the policy review committee because of board politics, and board politics had me removed. Baltimore Sun wrote papers. It became a whole sticky situation. NAACP had to get into it. My school system had to get, my specific high school had to get into it until I was reinstated into the board. And what I learned was adults can be big children. Adults are simply big children. And when you really learn that, you really learn sometimes the kid is the sanest person in the room, and the kid is often the one who never forgets the mission. And what I learned in both challenges is to never forget your why, because on your darkest days and on the most challenging days, that is what sees you through. So for me, my why is always being that representative for those who don't have a representative, being that voice for the voiceless. And what I had to learn was to always remind myself that and anchor myself on that, because that is what is going to keep me pushing when everything around me wants me to stop.
Oh, okay. First I want to say, Halima, it's great to see you again, and I don't have any problems with, I think you're great for this. I do want to know, you talked about remembering your why and being in those positions where politics kind of get in the way. So what are your basic steps for trying to problem solve those? How do you approach those challenges, and what are your methods for solving them and getting everyone on the same page?
For sure. Thank you so much for that question. I think research. I find that a lot of research tend not to be put towards problems. So I always prioritize myself in doing research as to what are the pros and the cons? Why are people for this and why are people not for this? And then it's asking questions. I have to ask the questions, because if there's something that I just don't know, I think I may be putting myself at risk and my vote at risk. And that was a lot of the main issues with SMOB, having to ask the questions. So of course, doing the research, asking the questions, and going back to those that I am working for in terms of, yes, I am on MHEC, but I'm there for the students. So what do the students want? I always find myself going back to the why and asking the why, what their needs are. And of course, I'm very led by my faith, so it takes a little prayer. I be praying. I'm certainly praying, taking it to God, but for the most part, it's then trusting my intuition based on what I know, based on what I've heard, based on what I've learned, and trusting that intuition to make the best decision, informed decision at that.
I have a question as well. Um, um, by the way, I think you're qualified, but since this directly works more closely with the Maryland governor and his appointees, like, what do you want to do in your career, and how would like this position kind of tailor towards that?
Oh, for sure. So I've worked with governor appointed. I was governor appointed for SMOB. So this is my second. Well, this would be my second time being governor. Well, prayerfully being governor appointed. And what I would love to do, I would love to become a superintendent and then work my way up into becoming a secretary of education, and opening my own school. Opening my own school back in my home country, Nigeria. Nelson Mandela said education is the most powerful tool you can use to change the world. And for the most part of my life, I never prided my, like, education was just by the way, but the more you get educated, the more you question the system that educates you, and the more you want people to have access to not just their own innate brilliance, but the brilliance around the world. So that is my hope and goal. Stay tuned. We will see.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions?
More so a comment because I've just been listening this entire time. I just wanted to say you're probably one of the most well-spoken people I've ever heard in my entire life. So I think you're very well qualified, and I just loved listening to you this entire time. It was amazing.
You want me to cry? I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry after Patrick, after your phenomenal ARCAD presentation. Don't make me cry, you all. Thank you all. I am very humbled.
So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen to look at the endorsement. Yes. So the endorsement of Halima Adekoya, did I pronounce that right? Okay. As the UMC representative to the Maryland Higher Education Commission Student Advisory Council. That's a word. Mouthful. Yeah, Candace, yes.
It's a UMBC nominee.
Nominee. Okay,
So
well,
someone has to move to amend.
let's say I move to amend SL 41-2021.
Second.
Second, all right. Whoa.
So you can change all of representative to nominee, correct? Because there's a couple in here. Yeah, perfect.
I cannot spell.
Is this the Student Advisory Council? No. That's not what this is. Right?
Thank you.
And this may be my fault. I may have given Mershad incorrect template to use. I think it's just MHEC. I don't think it's the Student Advisory Council. So you may have to move to amend to remove Student Advisory Council. That's my bad, Mershad. I apologize.
Also move to amend 2020 to 2021 academic year to 2021 to 2022. Is that correct? Wait, was there a second? Oh, thank you.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Now, with that being said, is there any more comments before we move to a motion?
I think there's one more Student Advisory Council.
Yes. And you could, I mean, you could add into it student commissioner, because that's the position. So it could be endorsement of Halima to the as the UMBC nominee to the to MHEC as student commissioner. So it's clear about what you're nominating. But you also have to move to amend to do that.
So many amendments. Okay.
I move to amend to do that. Is that allowed?
As long as it's right, when you vote
Second.
on it, you can amend it as much as you want.
Seconded, by the way. I lost my train of thought. What was it? A student?
Student commissioner.
Student commission.
A student commissioner. Mhm.
All right.
For what I highlighted, to the UMBC president, I don't know if I'm just not following, but Rashad, what did you mean? Like representing, like Dr. Obowski, or?
Yeah, so that this is a recommendation and an endorsement to senior leadership. So that would be Dr. Obowski.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Any final comments? I'm going to take that as a no. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve SL 41-2021.
Right, is there's a second? All right, number of senators for, could you please type I in the chat? I'm seeing 10. Okay, number of senators for is 10. There is 0 opposed, 0 abstaining, and there's 1 not present. And with that, this passes the Senate. Yay, congratulations, Halima.
Thank you all so much. I am deeply appreciative and honored to have been nominated and to now have passed this level. I will say you all have, for one, filled me up with so much joy and compliments, and I'm just gonna go and sleep happy tonight because of just all the love and compliments and support that you all have poured into me. And I am very grateful once again, and shout out to y'all. Y'all are doing amazing work. If nobody ever tells you all, you are doing hard work, and keep it up. I know it may get tiring, but keep it up.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad from that. I'm not sure what the next steps moving forward are for this position. Rashad or Candace?
Yeah, so Halima knows that she has to complete an application, and then Rashad, part of the process for Rashad is to write a letter on behalf of SGA, and also can include this legislation to show that not only is it coming from Rashad, but it's also been approved by the Senate of UMBC's SGA. So yeah, and then Halima knows her process for submitting her application.
So you know what to do. Cool, wonderful. Thank you again for coming to Senate, and I look forward to seeing your work in the future.
Thank you all once again. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well. Okay. Next item on our agenda is the Senator Initiative updates. Neil Benet, did you want to continue your discussion with your survey response?
Yeah, if y'all like, I would like to hear from you all, like how you thought the presentation went, like kind of your reaction to some of the data presented, things like that. just like general feedback, if there is any. I don't know.
I mean, I thought, given the sample size, I think it got across the data that you needed to find out. I mean, now it's a matter of just I guess action items. What do you do with this now? How do we truly bring about the support that Asian American students need in this moment, especially since the current I guess what we're doing, the status quo right now isn't enough. So that's the next conversations we should be having, and maybe that's something more reserved for the next SGA Senate, or just something we can do on our own time over the summer or things like that.
Just a quick comment. I think you do an amazing job balancing your advocacy and uplifting like Asian students' voices while recognizing that you're not Asian. I think that's like really impressive, and I think the amount of collaboration that you had is something I look up to a lot.
Oh, thank you. It's just I think it's just, you know, a responsibility to be an ally. That's what you do. So I just really wanted, like, because I wanted to do, I know I expressed this to Wendy, like I was itching to like do something, but I felt like I didn't want to drain students further because there were a lot of events that were held, and that is very, very emotionally draining. And I just didn't want it to be something that like students felt like, oh my God, another thing I have to like cry about or talk about what it's like to get hate crimed, you know? So I'm really glad that this had like a good response and it went over well. Yeah. In terms of, you know, what Jasmine said about, you know, having some students at the table with those emails, do y'all have any like ideas? Because she expressed like coming to the advisory board like with this presentation. So if we could like present maybe one or two things that we would like to see as Senate of how students can be involved, I think that would be beneficial as well.
I like the idea of like virtual suggestion boxes, so it's not bound by any like time constraints, because I think this was mostly in response to like the events that we had from I3B more recently. But what about just like a space or position, or I don't know what that would look like, but some way for students to just chime in whenever.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea as well. I think the main like obstacle that I ran into when doing this is the fact that, you know, it is virtual and people are drained like from the pandemic and from, you know, social aspects of their life. So I guess pushing out the suggestion box would just be like the main feat. But if it's there, I definitely think students would contribute. Like I'm surprised that even the 11 people that contributed and typing in their own answers, like that's a lot of emotional work to do. So I think that's a great idea. And I also would like to, oh, sorry. Julie.
I wanted to make a comment. I guess it goes specifically towards like the type of, I guess, statements, what we call them, statements regarding these different, I guess, events that may happen, hate crimes. I think in regards to that, I guess the suggestion would be, of course, I do think we need a student or some sort of student presence, but I think we also still need more information. How exactly do they go about that process of formulating the people that come together to make these statements? Because Dr. Lee said, it's not always the same people for the most part, depending on the situation, things like that. So that may beg the question of, do we have to have different students to represent each like ethnicity or sexual orientation, things like that? Those are some questions that may need to be answered in the future if we are to oppose to the administration that students need to be a part of that conversation regarding statements, so these statements can come off as more genuine and not something that they copy and paste off of some other website or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If I could jump in, I think ideally with what you're talking about, Julius, it should probably be somebody from top four, just because while I understand, you want to have like each like representative person of like that diversity, like label, whatnot, I think that gets sort of like reductive and like tokenist. I think that, the SGA like top four, especially the president, they are elected like as the voice of the student body, like as a representative of the student body, right? They receive the most votes of the student body. I think that they should be included in those discussions pretty much across the board when it relates to student life.
I definitely don't oppose like, you know, involving like organizations. I think like if it's like an issue of, you know, an anti-Black hate crime on campus, you know, like the BSU is a organization that is like dedicated to like Black life on campus, right? Like that's their purpose. But I worry like if you get really like really granular and specific about like getting like you just like a Black person to speak to that issue, that gets that I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that gets very like tokenism and could be problematic.
Yeah, and the other thing with that is, and that was kind of the problem with the small sample size that I presented is, like, while I like for me as an example, like while I do pride myself in like my activism and a big part of my life is advocacy, I cannot speak for all Black people. And like it's just impossible for me to be the driving voice for all of campus, considering that a lot of our Black population are also first generation or African students. So like that's just a whole different nuance that is applied. So, you know, it should like I think the organizational aspect would be more beneficial than like a student. So I definitely will bring that forward as well. What do y'all I was having this idea of kind of making this not recurring like all the time, but you know, when certain groups are affected, like having kind of a survey thing that is sent out so they can voice their opinions more accurately. What do y'all think about having that implemented?
That's definitely something that probably needs to be in place. Whether it's through SGA or I3B, that's definitely something like this. I feel like it's extremely necessary. Because like I said, we can put on all the events we want or things like that, but you never know how the students or people, you know, the everyday people are actually feeling in this moment. Why the things are happening to them. So I think surveys and things like the way we gather information on how people are really feeling, I feel like that's extremely important.
I also liked how you kept it very informal this time around, because when it's informal and you like send it to directly to those different groups and organizations on campus, I feel like that makes students feel all the more like they're actually able to express how they feel, and they already know it's anonymous and they know it's not being sent out by like, I don't know, somebody from admin. I feel like that makes a whole different effect on how students respond to these surveys going out.
Any other comments, concerns? I'm really grateful for like the feedback and the support I got, because it did take, you know, 2 weeks, but I really want to thank y'all for the support, because I did not think I was going to get responses, but thankfully everything worked out. And thank you, you know, Julius, Wendy, Mershad, Reese for like kind of like helping me like build it up and like make it presentable, is what I'll say. That's all I have concerning it. If anyone thinks, yeah.
So it's to me it sounds like there just needs to be a greater partnership between the SGA Senate and I3B for like these and I don't know if annual is the right word, but those surveys as well as holding more of student-led events.
I think I would like off the top of my head would be like not directly sending them out only as a response, because that is performative. You only do it when something happens, because then you don't want to check in holistically, but maybe just like randomly throughout the year, you just send a pulse check in, like, how do y'all feel right now? In that way, it's not in response, it's not like preventative, it's just, you know, genuinely wanting to know how people are feeling with the support from the university. So I think we could do something like that. Recently, just random. And I think student orgs liked it as well. Like they were pretty receptive. The only ones that weren't receptive just didn't answer the email. So like there's nothing you can do. But the ones who did answer the email like really were like into it and tried to push it out as much as they could. So I think it would go over well.
All right. Any last remarks? No. Okay. I have my list here, and I will. Julius, do you mind starting us off with your update?
Yeah, sure. So today, me and Mr. James Hamilton, head academic advisor of CAS, met with VCU's Business Student Ambassador program to discuss any questions and things that we had, and we gathered a lot of I guess information, and they answered a lot of our questions in regards to the creation of our program. Next steps would be now just to go back and meet with him and begin discussing more formation, things like that. And I think eventually we'll begin reaching out to different department heads to explain to them our proposal and gathering just more students at this point. The students they suggest could be probably instrumental in creating this program. I'm excited about this, and I think we're really seeing the beginning of something pretty nice that's going to happen in the fall.
That's good to hear. I'm really proud and happy. Thank you, Julius. Wendy.
So I had a meeting with some people from the Divest MCE working group on Friday, but a lot of that was just discussing logistics and planning the direction that we're going to take in the future, because we are at a bit of a standstill with establishing the student org till fall. So all we can do are, for now, just finishing the bylaws and constitution, which are still being drafted and finalized. And I think someone is preparing to present at the next Inclusion Council meeting on the 29th. And we've talked to Dr. K from the Honors College for a power mapping activity. So I think we're going to plan that meeting starting from the week of May 3rd. Oh yeah, also Rahman Liaka and we've been looking for a list of emails so we can send out more of this information for other schools, SGAs in Maryland.
Wonderful. I look forward to your May 3rd meeting. Mati.
So sorry if you're hearing this in the background, my brother's in the background. So I know last week, as I told you guys how I was waiting for Mr. Teak to get the QR code for the Trans app. The very next day, I actually got the QR code for that, which was really quick. And then towards the end of the week, I actually got other piece of information from him. I sent them to Kai this evening. There was a video that they made, a video with a transit introduction, introducing transit to students. So that's one thing I can publish up. The video shows how students can use transit. There's a brochure with the various transit stops and where they stop, an image with the map of the transit stops, and also almost like a document that shows an estimated cost to open a link between the main campus and Shady Grove. So what time they'll be the earliest stop, and how much it would cost to facilitate those shuttles. So that's what I have down now. And then I would like to kind of share the video. Although it was made in 2018, it's still kind of good. So I'd like to share the video and the flyer with the various stops, and then look into the doc he sent about creating the connection line between the main campus and Shady Grove, and then trying to get in contact with Shady Grove to see what can be done. So,
Yeah, I meant to ask. You also included a PowerPoint in that, and that's the PowerPoint you mentioned last week.
Yeah,
I do notice it's from 2017. Is there an updated version, or is this the most recent?
so I'll ask him for an updated version, but that's the one that he sent to look at. He was looking at modeling compared to what they had spent in 2017. So I'll contact Mr. Riker and ask him whether they have any updated information on transit, and then I'll send that one to you.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much. Reese.
Yeah, so kind of building off of GPA calculator, I created one that's similar, but it extends it a little bit. I'm calling it Transcript Analyzer. it's not really, I don't think it's useful as the GPA calculator, but it just allows you to explore your data and like just view trends on your own. I can give a demonstration, but I think it's also fun just to kind of use it yourself. There's definitely a lot on the homepage, and that's my bad, but basically it'll just show your transcript on a table, and then you can filter it based on like grade, semester, all that good stuff, just so you can. Because I'm big on the phrase data autonomy, kind of just having ownership of your own data, being able to do what you will with your data. So I think that the transcript just PeopleSoft is ugly. The unofficial transcript's not very pretty either. So so just as a way to interact, engage with your data, to own it, and then I'll answer any questions about that later in the chat. But also, the Inclusion Courtyard initiative is rolling along nicely. We talked with Dr. Prina Jacob, who works in the CASA's Dean's office, and she had some great ideas regarding the nature of public art in the Inclusion Courtyard space, and perhaps creative ways to finagle around some of facility management's some of their hangups on various things. So that is pretty much like the progress. We can't do too much because they're still renovating the space and other things like that. And yeah, that's funny.
Echoing what Nail and I said, that what you created is very cool. And finagling around like those loopholes in what especially what Dr. Young mentioned for the procedures and stuff like that. It can be a real hassle, but I'm sure that you and I forgot their name you mentioned, but you can find a very creative outlet and sort of loophole through it. So cool. Thanks, Reese. Mario.
So I took last week to kind of focus more on the international student side of things rather than the transfer student side of things, just because the meetings kind of just played out that way, where a lot more people from that side of things were available to meet last week. So we met with Adam Julian, and so a few things that we talked about was currently IES is very focused on providing support, but more so like, I guess like technical support with like immigration documents and specific focus on like visa status and citizenship and stuff like that at UMBC for international students, but they don't really have like an organization that is dedicated towards comfort and inclusivity and that really advocates for those different subsets for their experience at UMBC. So we brainstormed like a few different things to implement in the future, and one of the things that Shania brought up, who is the international student that I've been working with throughout this entire process, was that she wants to create like a specific organization at UMBC that is dedicated towards uplifting the voices of the international student community. Because, for instance, with the transfer students, they already have that organization. But if you look at other organizations at UMBC, like the only organization that we don't really have is for the international students. So that's something that she wants to start, and I definitely think she should lead it because she is an international student herself and she can really speak to a lot of the struggles that they've had at UMBC. And something else that I didn't really consider is that a lot of our international student population is our graduate students, and they don't really have much of a voice in a lot of the things at UMBC, for instance, our SGA. And so he told us that they already sent out a survey specifically for them and to get their responses. Oh, GSA, I'm assuming Graduate Student Association, Wendy? Yeah, not too much because that's not really focused from what he told us on the international student side of things. That's there for them like as graduate student support, but not really for the international students that come here from countries abroad to do their master's or their PhD at UMBC. But yeah, he did tell us that he recently sent out a survey to gather their responses and their feelings regarding their experiences, just to also be inclusive of graduate students at UMBC, since a lot of them are international students. And aside from like taking the steps to create and help her create that organization, we're thinking of, since a survey went out, maybe like organizing a focus group where we can actually hear them speak about their experiences and see what they would like to collaborate on, because according to him, they would really love to collaborate. They just feel like they don't really get much of an opportunity to do so. International students, but more so graduate students that are international students. So looking forward to expanding on that within this week as well.
Yes, I know that there was a meeting earlier today that was sort of miscommunicated from so once I receive any information regarding that, I can definitely send it to you, Maria.
Thank you. Was this the meeting that Joshua put in the WebEx?
I believe so. It's for the International Student Scholar Subcommittee. So I that might also be able to help.
Definitely. Yeah, I wanted to go to that, but I had class. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be reaching back out with you, Maria. But wonderful. Thanks, Maria. Mena.
Hi, so Maria, that's actually really good because I think I worked with him before. Because he's also on a student fee advisory committee, and I heard some of his concerns, especially with transit, about like how graduate students here are often like. Sorry. Anyway, I'm just really glad that you're addressing that aspect because I feel like working through it with the international office will help him a little bit more just because I wasn't really sure how to help. And I do think graduate students here are a bit underlooked, and it's kind of hard because we also do represent undergraduate students, but for sure, that was really important. For my initiative updates, it's just again wrapping things up with the compost initiative. We met up again just to discuss how we're gonna like basically put it on hold. This is also because I'm working with RSA on this, and Jack isn't really running for president, and I might not be able to. Considering my if my re-election runs through, I won't be on Senate. If it basically we're just connecting people in like who's going to be who we're passing on the compost initiative to next, and how we can meet up over summer and discuss expanding it before we start, because now that it's going to be a full semester, we want to make 100 students as a start for the compost initiative, and we just have a lot of talks about how we're going to do that, who we're meeting up with, who is the next in charge of it, and yeah. So it wasn't really any improvements, but I'm I'm excited for next year.
Yeah. When do results from the elections are finalized by?
Election results will be announced next Monday at free hour.
Next Monday.
Oh, really? I thought for some reason it was like May 14th or something. Or
next Monday, free hour. The elections close on Friday, 11:59, and then they take the weekend to certify the results, and then they will live stream the announcements. They'll put a link probably up the middle of this week for it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So in terms of sustainability, I guess we have to wait until then. But with RSA, could you possibly like meet with Paisley? I think would be the best contact for RSA because.
Oh, that's actually sorry. Yeah, he told me that he's told Paisley about all this, but he's actually passing it on to someone else who's gonna be our new point of contact for now, and he's also gonna Jack will still be following up on this himself, but just so we can have the RSA contact. He already passed us on to someone who will be doing that, and we are starting to get to know them as well.
Great. Wonderful. Good things. Thanks. Thank you so much, Mena.
Thank you.
Luna, you already gave us your update, but is there anything else you wanted to add or mention? No? Cool, cool, cool. You're awesome. Patrick.
Hey. So this week I emailed Delegate Eric Eversole and Terry Hill about the MCE issue. Terry Hill is actually the delegate who introduced legislation last session for MCE employees to be, or MCE prisoners / employees to be paid $15 minimum wage, which isn't necessarily like the direction that we're looking to take it, but she is the person with like the most knowledge on the issue. So the goal with that is to get her to either one of two things: either come and speak to us, the Senate, or host like a larger event on campus. These will probably be aiming for next semester, as soon as possible, like in the next semester. So that's a little bit longer term. But then on top of that, I'm meeting with comms on Wednesday to try to get some graphics pulled up. Again, so that we can send out next semester. I'm worried if we send out a bunch of like information now, it'll get lost in finals week. So I thought that it was really important that if we're gonna like actually try to create like a kind of a groundswell of movement, that it would be starting next semester alongside like the Divest MCE student group and etc. I also emailed the SGAs at University of Baltimore, Towson, UMES, Coppin State, and the University of Maryland, Baltimore, which I didn't know they had an SGA, but they do. All with copies of the resolution, as well as information on how to follow up. And so I'm hoping to set up meetings with them this week to try to either do one of two things again, like either have them pass similar resolution or sign on to ours, and also to try to present like a really united front to USM at maybe like the next like USM the student council meeting, or be able to send it to them by email, but preferably in person would be the route for delivering those. I still need to find the email that I sent to Bowie State bounced back. It was like I don't know if the email address was working. And then I still can't find Morgan State's email. It's not on like it's not on the USM website or anything like that. So I'm going to try to reach out to some people that I know there, but I haven't had any luck with them yet. But then, and for next week, what I'm hoping to do is, like I said, set up some of those meetings with those students, and also hear back hopefully from one of the two delegates, so we can have them either speak to us now or have the event in the fall, which would be great. So, thanks.
Dope. And if you don't get a response from the, was it Bowie that got bounced back? What I did when I was helping Mena with contacting University California systems was I literally put maybe 60 people in one email in blind copy. So I made sure my name was mentioned in passing. So it gets there. So if they don't respond, or if the email address doesn't work, yeah, just go to like random people that you find online on their website that says like they work in this position.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Patrick. Wonderful. Z.
I'm still waiting to hear back from communications, and I just got an email back from David Royer about when Senate's over, I'm going to get back to him.
Wonderful. Did you make any possible Canva ideas? Play around with Canva a bit?
Canva, I'm looking into. Canva, I'm not much of a designer, so that's a bit of a slower process for me.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm the literal definition of that meme. Graphic design is my passion. So I know Canva has a few templates that you can just like kind of copy and paste into. And if you need any help with that this week, I'm more than willing to meet up with you this week. Cool. I'll reach back with you, Z, and My initiative update, apparently contracts and litigation, they're very fun. W-9 forms are being involved. David Royer and general counsel and procurement is handling all that well. Thank you again, Julius, for being able to restock the menstrual products items on Friday. So thank you so much for doing that. And shared governance committee updates is next. I do realize we are about 6 minutes behind schedule. Julius, do you mind giving us the major ones briefly?
Yeah, I gotta bring up the doc because I thought you was gonna share. Hold up.
Oh, I can share my screen.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah, the big things I think that were mentioned in the meeting were more or less them once again talking more about fall planning. I think the biggest thing I wanted to point out was the fact that how the UNC will now be a classroom. That's the biggest thing I wanted to point out. It's like the UNC ballroom and all the classes on like the third floor will be classrooms. And the way that's going to work is directly for let's say larger scale lecture classes. Let's say I don't know, Chem 101, for example. The teacher will be teaching, let's say, in the main hall, but in these separate rooms, there'll be like maybe a TV and an assistant technician there who will work, be able to like just broadcast to the student that's in there, or maybe from online point the class and things like that. That was a really big thing for me as well that I was pointing out. Also just the creation of a safe space for students who, let's say, it's a Monday and you have free classes and your middle class is an online class, but right after that class, you have like a 15-minute break or whatever. Then you got in person. So instead of you going home, coming back or whatever, thing like that, you can be on campus. And this they're trying to create this space where people can just stay on campus for that one online class and then go to the in-person class so they don't go back and forth. Other than that, Mile Hall is still getting renovations and Mile Hall Lecture Hall is getting renovations, upgrades and things like that. So some of the details of like aviation, seats getting completely rearranged and things like that. It's gonna look a lot different and things like that. That's about it. That's generally what was talked about. Just upgrades to my lecture hall, UC ballroom being a classroom now, and just the whole UNC building, and a few AVA design upgrades across the board.
Cool. That when you mentioned the whole UC situation, I was like, oh, that's gonna feel uneasy. It feels uneasy. I will say, but if it gets the job done, then I guess I just wonder how students are gonna feel about that.
It's only going to be like 4 classes from what they've been saying. Only like 4 classes may use it, but they're opening it up for professors to decide if they want to house their classes there now. But they only said maybe like 4 classes may actually use it. So take it with a grain of salt.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Julius, for that. Are there any other shared governance committee updates? No. Again, ACC is canceled throughout pretty much a month and a half now. Yes. Okay. Announcements. I want to mention for announcements that the SRC report, please finish it by Wednesday. SRC committee is going to be meeting, or stipend review committee is going to be meeting up this Saturday and wants everything finalized by Wednesday. So for this week's weekly report on that spreadsheet, could you have completed it by Wednesday? 11:59 on Wednesday. Yes, thanks, Wendy. I attached the April Senate report again here. And yeah, are there any other announcements that anyone wants to make? Candace.
A reminder that I sent out a link to your annual report, which is more like an annual reflection. That's due on I think it was due May 15th. It was already mentioned, the elections are still running and they end this Friday at 11:59 p.m. Again, if anybody needs help securing a COVID vaccine appointment, I'm here to help. Your family members, your friends, if you're just like, I don't have the mental capacity to book that for myself, but I'll do a Google form. I'll help you. And it's going to be beautiful, at least the beginning of this week. I'm not sure about the end, but Wednesday is supposed to be very nice. So please get outside. It's good for your head and your heart.
Remember to wear SPF. Want to get them diamonds.
Candace, so wait, for the end of the year, you send it as an email?
I did send it as an email on the officer listserv.
Was that like last week?
It
Was that
was
recent?
it was like, I remember it was like maybe on Monday, last Monday, the 19th. I can resend it. I can resend it. I can resend it.
Yeah, can you resend it? Because
I can actually just, how about I just drop the link in all of your WebEx Teams rooms? How about that?
Yeah, that can work. Thank you.
You got it. You got it.
Perfect.
Hi, I had two small announcements, Kai. Is it okay if I went?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so end of the year end of the year celebration dinner. This Friday at free hour. Please come if you can. Y'all killed it this year. Honestly, guys, pat yourself in the back because we killed it this year. Even though it was COVID, we killed it. So come celebrate your accomplishments. I personally wouldn't be there because I have a research position that I've been trying to get into, and the first meeting is on Friday, so I'm not trying to lose that. But you also definitely go. It's a free hour. You should go. And secondly, speaking of USMSC, the position of VP of undergrad is taking candidates now. So if you or anyone that you know of is interested in running for that position, I'd highly recommend it. Nayla Benet ran for the position last year, so she could give you a little bit of detail about how that process looks like. But I highly recommend that we get our name as deep into the USMSC caucus as we can. Like get our toes deep in there. So if you know anyone that you think would be great for that position, or if you yourself would like to be considered for that position, shoot me an email and I'll nominate you. Thanks.
Cool.
I have another quick announcement. So I see that Bee's not here, but she did send out this link from last week's meeting for the letter to future senators. So I'm just going to drop that link in the chat one more time, and she wants it by Saturday, May 1st. And I'll put it into the WebEx Teams as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Wendy. I forgot to include that. Thanks for the catch. Okay. All right, it is 7:45, and so I adjourn the meeting at 7:45. Thank you so much. I'm glad it was only 15 minutes over rather than an hour like last week.